But yo, you're making a master thesis film, bro. Bro, I definitely want you to dive into that, bro. Let's dive into that, bro. It's fucking fire, bro. Once you said it, bro, I was excited.
Yeah, so for my master's, I need to come up with a 30-minute documentary film on the topic of my choosing. And what I'm going with is I'm focusing on hip hop. Now, Vic, I know you're a big fan of hip hop yourself, bro.
I also am.
Bro. Jason too.
Jason too. Jason.
He just came a little late, but he's here, bro. He's here, bro. He's nasty, bro.
So both of y'all fans, and I love them. You feel me? And I think hip hop is something that's very important, especially to our generation. Because so what my project focuses on is the history of hip hop as it spawned in the 80s, as not only an art form, but as a tool against oppression and against colonialization. You see, if you study the roots of hip hop as it came over, it stems from sub-Saharan African traditions of storytelling. You feel me? I forgot what the name was, but pretty much in the villages in sub-Saharan Africa, there'd be like a chief storyteller, and he would be the one in charge of educating the tribe on stories of the tribe's history, of their past, of their trials, their wins, their losses, their language. You know, pretty much, again, he's like a professor. He educates the tribe on these ideas, and it's all orally spoken. You know, there wasn't no written language at the time.
And they spread it?
Spoken. Yes. So you just spread it like how we would gather, for example, like if you gather for a feast, you know, we all come together, eat, enjoy. That's what they would do. They would come together, gather, and then learn from the oral storyteller. Now, this tradition was then taken through the African Atlantic slave trade. When slaves were brought over to the New World, this tradition was taken with them. And then it was forged and it expanded and changed in the plantation. So now in the plantation, the same idea came about because, sadly, a lot of the Africans lost their language. They lost their connection with their roots, with their culture, with their traditions. So there still was the ability of that oral speaking, oral narration that progressed in the plantation, and it helped people keep that connection to their home. You know what I mean? And they expanded. So in the plantations, they would sing. They were called don't quote me on it, but they were called like slave blues, and it was pretty much like a type of music they would sing while they worked, just to make the time pass and make things better. Feel me? And then also they would be teaching themselves. You know, they would talk about the African home. Anyways, that grew into what we call then blues, and then that became rock and roll. That became soul music. That became then what eventually was hip hop. That spawned in the 80s in New York. Now, if you study hip hop and where it came from how am I blanking? I'm not. Give me a borough in New York. If you name it to me, I'll tell you. You guys been
Bronx,
Queens.
Bronx. Thank you. Nah, Vic knows. It started up in the Bronx. Now, obviously, in the 70s and 80s, there was a lot of turmoil going on in New York, especially with the crackdown on drugs, with the war on drugs, with the crackdown on crack. You know, a lot of the institutional racism that was going on in America, it was like a breeding ground for just turmoil in these communities. They were impoverished. They were drug infested. There was gang violence. It was just like a breeding ground for just bad shit. And what came out of this was hip hop. It was an ability for these young kids who had no voice. Feel me? They had no education. I take that back. They didn't have an education. They were given a poor education. So through hip hop, they found a voice in which to tell the world, yo, I'm here. I exist. Like we need help. Like, look at us. The world doesn't give a fuck about us. Bro, we're over here dying. And that's what hip hop created for them. It was that voice. And then obviously as it grew and it expanded, you see a pattern that hip hop always found its home in these communities, in these impoverished communities, as it made its way to the West Coast. You know, obviously you have famous groups like NWA that came up in Compton. And people like Ice Cube, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg.
Yep.
Is it coincidental that all these people come from, you know, not very good backgrounds? It's because hip hop is that foundation for that. You feel me? It gives people in that shitty situation a voice. And then that grew internationally. And then that's what my project is going to focus on, the international scope of it. How hip hop then came about in Puerto Rico, for example, and how it came about in my home country in Colombia. But it came about in the same exact way in the boroughs, in the poor communities, where these kids needed to tell their story. They needed to say something. You know what I mean? And it was literally and hypothetically a mic given to them in their hand. You know, here's my story. This is what I go through. This is what I deal with every single day outside when I walk out of my home. And it was that ability for them to do that. So hip hop really became a tool against colonialization, against oppression. You know, find a way to make it out of that. So yeah, that's really what the projects we're going to be focusing on. The whole history of that. It's going to have more brief introductions on New York and West Coast, but it's mainly going to focus in Colombia, because in Colombia there's obviously a lot of people know about Pablo Escobar and the Medellin cartel that came about in the 70s and 80s. But what a lot of people don't know is then the turmoil that came after that, because after Pablo was gone, the FARC was still around. The FARC was pretty much a guerrilla military that was funded first by the Colombian government, and that was funded by other narcos who wanted to see Pablo Escobar dead. And then eventually, like, they were a communist party, and then eventually they grew, they had their own power, but then they pretty much started a civil war in Colombia. And Colombia has been in a civil war for years. And like, my parents grew up in that generation. That shit was bad. It was bad. People were dying left and right. There were bombs going off every single day. Medellin was in turmoil. But all this turmoil led to the poor communities that are infected to spawn things like hip hop. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Comuna 13. It's like globalized now. Like, a lot of people talk about it. Comuna 13 is like this community in Colombia, very poor, but it recently got a lot of recognition in like the world, like all over the world, for it being this hub of art, hub of like, there's a lot of, like, the whole city's covered in graffiti, or the whole town is covered in graffiti. There's musicians all over in every single corner. There's rappers, there's artists, and this whole borough is known for breeding artists. So it's very popular. It's gotten a lot of traction. But yeah, so, and all of that came from the turmoil that, again, poverty causes, that drug abuse causes, that the military causes, that the government causes, oppression causes. And that's what came from it. Again, like to quote Tupac, you know, it's a rose that grew from the concrete. Pretty much.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, no, I definitely agree, bro. That's awesome, bro. That's, bro, beautiful, bro. Like, cause, bro, music, bro. If I didn't have hip hop, bro, and culture, bro, and rap, and you know, I didn't get to listen to, like, I don't know, songs like "Love Yours," bro, J. Cole, bro, fucking, you know, just the, you know, just stuff that I can relate to, bro, as a person living the life that I'm living in the city that I'm in, bro, you know, in the situation I'm in. I think it would, like, I don't even know where I would be, bro. Like, music is inspired me to do so much things, bro, and has taught me, I don't want to say taught, because it's not like a teacher, bro. It kind of is, but not like a physical teacher, you know what I mean? Like, it like
makes you think and reflect, and then you
grew, it helped me grow up
from it.
Yes.
Yeah, bro. Like,
I agree, and that's why I'm very passionate, especially about hip hop. Hip hop changed my life. I wouldn't be the man I am today. I wouldn't know the things that I know today if it wasn't for hip hop.
Yeah.
When I got into college, most of my high school career, I listened to, I guess, whatever was out. You feel me? I remember freshman year of college, I had to commute 2 hours there and back to school. I used to take the T, the Green Line, 2 hours there and back every single day. So I just started listening to music. I started with Biggie, Ready to Die. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna dive into 90s music for some reason. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That was the first like 90s album that I listened to all the way through. Fucking fell in love, bro. I fell in love with the storytelling. And then from there, I moved on to Nas, to Pac, to Wu-Tang, to Mobb Deep. And like, I'm a big 90s hip hop. That's my thing. And what really, I remember one day I'm listening. I think it was like to Nas. I'm on a train listening. And I had this thought. I was like, yo, every single album, every single artist, they keep rapping about and talking about the same shit.
Yeah.
And not in the bad way, in the sense where every single one of these individuals clearly has dealt with drug abuse, has dealt with gun violence, has dealt with gang violence, has dealt with miseducation, with poverty, with alcoholism. Why is this such a constant theme throughout all these different genres, throughout all these different artists, throughout all these different times when these albums came out? Why is this a constant theme? And I started thinking to myself, I'm like, yo, Like, even though, like, if you don't really pay attention, you kind of just, it almost goes past you. But you realize, yo, these people are talking about this because they live it. They experience it. Like, they don't make the shit up. Like, for example, say like rappers know nowadays, but they don't make the shit up. You know, this is things that they are physically going through day in and day out. This is the childhood that they grew up in. And me, I believe I grew up with privilege. You know what I mean? I grew up in Revere. Did I grow up in a wealthy family? No. You feel me? I'm an immigrant. I came from Colombia. Even though I had my own hardships, I never had to walk out my house and be scared to get shot down every single day. You feel me? Mm-hmm. And then I wasn't worried about getting jumped by another gang. You feel me? Revere was fairly safe. You know what I mean? I wasn't worried about my parents coming home to my parents' overdose. I wasn't worried about that shit. I didn't have to worry about. You feel me? So I knew I was blessed in that way, but I never really heard the first person perspective of someone who had to go through that. And that's what rap really like gave to me. I was like, it's just like reading a book where I got insight into someone else's life. I only live my life, but through that music and through those artists, I was able to get insight in someone else's life and learn from their turmoils, from their adventures, and from their experiences. And I was just like, it hit me. I was like, damn, that's crazy. These motherfuckers live through this shit day in and day out.
And live to tell the story, bro.
Sorry, and that's when it got me. I was like, man, that's crazy, dude. Like and they can share that with me, and I'm here listening to it. I took it just like you would a book. And yeah, from there on, that's really what got me interested in the mind and society and realizing why we live the way we live, why things are the way they are. And I owe that all to hip hop.